So today we are going to talk about solving linear, quadratic, and absolute values equations and inequalities. And remember, these beginning problems here are all multiple choice, so if you are truly stuck, you could always work backwards. But what I encourage you to do is, if you know how to do the problem, just try it and see if it matches one of the answers. So this is just a simple equation. We are going to add x to both sides. And we get 6x plus 7 equals negative 3. Subtract 7 from both sides, and you get 6x equals negative 10. Divide by 6, and you get negative 10 over 6. Now notice that doesn't match any of our answers, but we can reduce by 2, and we get negative 5 over 3. Okay, number 2. Don't let the fractions scare you. You're doing the exact same thing. You're going to combine like terms, so I'm going to subtract 1/3 x from both sides. So if you have 2/3 minus 1/3, because they have a common denominator, it just gives us 1/3 x. Add 5 to both sides. And now we have 1/3 x equals 14. To get rid of the 1 over 3, we are going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 3, or 3 over 1. That cancels the 3, and we have x equals 42. I would like you to pause the video and do number 3. Remember, you are going to have to distribute here before you combine like terms. Number 4. This is an inequality. You're going to do it the same way as an equality, only you're going to flip the sign if you multiply or divide by a negative. So first, I'm going to subtract 1x from both sides. I get negative 7x is greater than negative 14. I am going to divide by a negative 7. So instead of greater than, I have to flip it to less than. Negative over negative is a positive 2. The answer is A. Number 5 is a compound inequality. We have to get x by itself, so we're going to subtract 2, but when we do that, we have to do that in the middle, on the right, and on the left. So 9 minus 2 is 7, less than or equal to negative x less than 4. We want x, not negative x, so we're going to divide by a negative, which again will flip the signs. Now be careful here. We've got negative 7 and 4, and negative 4. So we have negative 7 and negative 4. We have two options here. Look at A and look at B. What is the difference? This one says that x is greater than negative 4 or x is less than or equal to negative 7. This one says that x is greater than or equal to negative 7 and less than negative 4. So here we have x is greater than negative 4. If we looked at this on a number line, negative 7 and negative 4, we'd have greater than negative 4, and we'd have less than or equal to negative 7. Notice these are going in opposite directions. There's not a point that will fall in both of the shaded areas, so this is an OR problem. So your answer should be not B, it should be A. X is greater than negative 4 or x is less than negative 7. Okay, please pause the video and try number 6. For number 6, just treat this as two separate problems. The OR just says that this inequality works or this inequality works, so two separate problems. Okay. Solving absolute value equations. Alright, so if we just take the absolute value of x equals 4, what numbers could I plug in there? Remember, if I plug in the absolute value of 4, that does equal 4. But if I plug in negative 4, the absolute value of negative 4 is also 4. So the inside could be equal to a positive or a negative. So when you have an equation like number 1, we're going to say that the inside is equal to a positive 7 or a negative 7. You're going to solve those separately. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides here, and I get 11. I'm going to add 4 to both sides here, and I get negative 3. So I get 2 possible answers. Number 2, first I have to isolate the absolute value. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. I get the absolute value of 2x equals 8. Now again, the inside can be equal to a positive or a negative, and I solve those individually. So this gives me 4, and this gives me negative 4. Number 3 is just a multiple choice, but we're going to treat it the same way. Again, if you don't know how to do a problem, simply work backwards and plug in, because the answer is there. It's just your job to pick one. So first I'm going to add 6 to both sides. And then I'm going to say, okay, the inside can be equal to a positive or a negative. So if I subtract 8 from both sides, I get 8 here. And if I subtract 8 from both sides, I get negative 24 here. Answer C. Okay, I would like you to pause the video and try problems 4, 5, and 6. Okay, let's move on to quadratics. Remember, you want to factor for these. And in order to factor and solve, you need it set equal to 0. So number 1 is set equal to 0. We want to find two numbers that add to be negative 8 and multiply to be negative 33. Well, the numbers that multiply to be negative 33 are 1 and 33, or 3 and 11. Well, 1 and 33 cannot add to be negative 8, but 3 and 11 can. Because remember, we're multiplying to be a negative, so that means that one of our signs needs to be positive, one needs to be negative. Because we are adding to be a negative 8, our bigger number 11 needs to be negative. You can check this by saying 3 times x is 3x. X times negative 11 is negative 11x. If you add these together, you do indeed get the negative 8x. But they want us to solve this, so we're going to set each factor equal to 0. So here I'll subtract 3 and get negative 3. Here I'm going to add 11, and I get x equals 11. Okay, number 2 is a difference of two squares. So you're going to square root this and square root this. Because you're multiplying to be a negative, you want one positive, one negative. Square root of 81 is 9. Square root of x squared is x, so you have 9x. Square root of 16 is 4. So when you set each set of parentheses equal to 0 and solve, you're going to get your two answers. So here I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides and divide, and I get x equals 4 over 9. The only difference here is I'm going to add 4 to both sides, so I'm going to get, sorry, this should be negative. I'm going to add 4 to both sides on this one, and I get x equals positive 4 over 9. Okay, number 3. Number 3 is a little bit different from 1 and 2 because it's not set equal to 0. We first need to add 6x to both sides. So we get x cubed plus 5x squared plus 6x equals 0. Notice I put it in standard form from highest exponents to lowest exponents. And I noticed that I can factor out an x because they all have one x in common. So if I factor out an x, I get x squared plus 5x plus 6 remaining. Okay, I am going to say that it is your job to finish factoring and solving this. Hint, you should have 3 answers. So your job is to complete this problem, 4, 5, and 6 above, and 3 and 6 in the first section.